Let's talk about how far we've come with this coronavirus and how much more we still have to figure out. There's plenty we're still learning, from how we avoid getting sick to how we deal with it when we do, and what the future looks like. Let's go over how this virus behaves. From the moment a person is infected, it can take up to 14 days for symptoms to appear, but usually it's between 5 and 6 days. Some people can infect others just before they get symptoms. This is known as pre-symptomatic transmission. Other people never develop symptoms, but can still spread the virus. This is called asymptomatic transmission, but it doesn't appear to be as common. It's why we have to act like everyone's sick, because a lot of the time we just don't know who is.
This virus operates in clusters. If you have people in close contact with one another, spending long periods of time together, you have more exposure, the virus will spread.
What seems to be happening is that a small number of infected people, about 10 to 20%, are responsible for around 80% of transmission events. For example, a singer in the US state of Washington infected 53 people at a choir practice. There was super spreading at a mega church in Seoul, at a football game in Italy, and it's still happening.
We're seeing outbreaks in restaurants, in nightclubs, which happen indoors. Many people want to get back to their normal lives. They want to have their friends over for dinner. But right now, those types of activities are safer outdoors than they are indoors. And part of that is about how these particles move around.
If particles are larger, they tend to travel a certain distance, let's say about a meter, and then fall to the ground. Scientists call these droplets. But if they're smaller, they can stay suspended in the air for longer and potentially travel much further. Scientists call these aerosols. So if she has COVID-19 and she's talking to me from across the room, there is poor ventilation in here, and neither of us is wearing a mask. The aerosols might still reach me, and that could infect me if enough of the virus reaches my eyes, nose, or mouth. It all depends on the environment. Scientists talk about the 3 C's: close interactions, crowded areas, and closed-off spaces without proper ventilation.
Think, for example, on many occasions, how far from a person smoking you can smell cigarette smoke. So this is the same mechanism for the virus. It travels with the air current.
But no matter the environment, the advice is the same. Things like washing your hands, keeping a distance of at least a meter, and wearing a mask. Now, children can spread this virus, but for some reason, they don't seem to get as sick. And if children do get it, they're way less likely to die. By mid-July in the US, the Centers for Disease Control said the virus had killed more than 150,000 people, but only 17 of them were under the age of 5. But
why some children develop this reaction to COVID-19 and other children just laugh it off is still a complete unknown.
There's other stuff scientists are still working out, like why COVID-19 can be so tough on some people.
So even people with mild disease that don't necessarily require hospitalization, it's still quite a disease to go through. And we are learning that individuals are having long-term effects from their infection.
So there's a lot more to figure out. But all anyone really wants to know is, when can our lives go back to normal? The WHO says that's already possible, but it's a new normal. We have to take the right precautions, but they say we don't need any more countrywide lockdowns.
Many countries had to introduce lockdowns because they needed time. But now we have to lift up, we have to get out of that lockdown situation. We can target our interventions at a small geographic level where they're actually needed. They can be time-bound so that the entire country doesn't need to go into these so-called lockdown measures again.
So we know what we need to do to stay safe, and we know a lot more about how this virus spreads. Now, we've just got to learn to live with it.